In this video, we're going to be looking at what form of exercise is best for burning fat. Now, have you noticed a lot of people on the running machines at the gym tend to be the ones that are trying to burn fat? And a month or two later, you see them the same size, or some of them have actually increased in size. So clearly, cardio doesn't seem to be that great at burning fat. Now, I know that's a rather controversial statement, but let's examine the facts for a moment. Let's say you had a target of burning just 1 pound of fat. That fat contains between 3,436 and 3,752 calories. Conventional wisdom tells us that if you have a metabolism that burns, say, 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day, you can build a calorie deficit by doing cardio. And if you do that regularly enough, that should bring your weight down. Now, whilst that's technically true, it's only so if you have burnt through your glycogen stores and then start burning fat. However, the muscles initially burn glycogen when you do cardio and very little fat. Glycogen is stored in the liver and the muscles, and you typically have a day or two storage depending on how much physical demand you have in your lifestyle. We're going to cover that in another video. Now, let's look back at cardio. Most people do their cardio and then eat some carbs within the next 6 to 8 hours. So typically you top up your glycogen stores again, and fat simply never gets called upon as an energy source. If you take the average 155-pound person running at, say, 7 minutes per mile, they would burn typically around 1,078 calories in that hour. That's a pretty fast pace for most people. Let's round that for simplicity to 1,000 calories an hour. So you can see that if fat was your target and you were targeting 1 pound, you could run it off in a few days if you ran 7 minutes a mile daily. But that assumes you've eaten no carbs in the interim. And I want to underline that again. It assumes you've eaten no carbs in the interim. And that's not how most of us eat. Now, I don't want you to get depressed at this point. Just let's get real here. You came to this channel because you want to lose fat fast. Ask yourself why, when you look at these running machines, or look on the road, there's tons of people running, walking, and yet no one ever tells them these basic facts. It's a little bit like the fitness industry want you to feel guilty because you haven't tried hard enough, or you had the occasional cheat day. Yet, when you're not given an in-depth understanding, you're setting yourself up to fail. This channel will not only explain the basics, it will show you how to seriously burn fat that you've stored faster than anything else you've been told to date. So please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell because you're going to be receiving a lot of new updates. So the important point to note here is that you can run 3 days in a row and still not be burning fat unless you've limited the carbs, because they're going to keep pushing glycogen into the storage and you're never going to get through that glycogen to hit your fat storage. So the mission here really is looking at how we can directly access the fat storage tanks and drain them at the same time as not topping them up again. We covered in earlier videos on this channel why insulin is the main cause of fat storage. However, a high percentage of people consider themselves overweight or actually what's known as insulin resistant. If you are, not only do you have to be very careful what form of exercise you start with, but you also have to adopt an insulin resistant diet to burn fat when exercising. If you don't, you're going to hop from diet to diet, exercise routine to exercise routine, and sadly find your weight slowly increasing year by year. Now, how do I know this? Well, I've just described myself. It wasn't until I delved into the science behind fat burning that I actually started to burn serious amounts of fat myself. And the most important point, I wasn't actually hungry, so it wasn't a chore. I exercise because I enjoy it. It never seems like hard work because I make it fun. If exercise isn't enjoyable, you'll find an excuse to give it up. I did. If diets are boring, you'll fall off of them eventually. Sure, you'll be disciplined for a while, but you'll fall off of them. Also, be aware that a lot of our eating habits were programmed into us at a young age. And ever since then, we've been fed false information by advertisers. But the good news is we can learn new habits. Insulin resistance has really two causes. The first is a high level of the hormone cortisol. Now, whilst its job is to cannibalize protein and fat to raise the blood sugar, it does so assuming that we need a massive amount of physical action when the stressor arrives, like running away from a lion, for example. So it dials down insulin sensitivity and makes us insulin resistant. However, as we don't require that physical activity, the blood sugar is raised too high, and that sparks a insulin resistance. Poor eating habits are the other reason, and once the fat cells become bloated enough, they also dial back the sensitivity because they're struggling to cope. We'll look at how to correct the poor eating habits shortly. Now, let's first of all examine if you are insulin resistant without rushing off and getting blood tests. If you've had difficulty losing weight and tend to store your fat around the tummy, that's one clue. Similarly, if you tend to get irritable when you haven't eaten, or you're tired a lot of the time, that can also be an indication. If at certain times of the day you've got a foggy mind, you have difficulty concentrating, or never tend to be satisfied when you have eaten, that's another clue. When you do become insulin resistant, it has like a compounding effect on the body because you crave sweet stuff, salty stuff, or carbs. At the most advanced stage, you find that you will be urinating frequently and have extreme thirst. That's because insulin has an effect on the kidneys and it lowers blood sugar through the urine, so you simply urinate more, passing the blood sugar out through the urine. This later stage could actually lead to diabetes, so you're going to need to look closely at this and adjust what you're doing. We're not just talking about fat and health, we're talking about serious potential health problems unless you actually understand this and correct it longer term. Now, it gets worse, I'm afraid. One of insulin's functions is to pass amino acids into the muscle. Now, if we're insulin resistant, it's harder and harder for insulin to feed muscles, so it becomes difficult to build the very muscles that you're trying to exercise. You see, a lot of people as they age, they have a lot of saggy skin around, and that's very visible in areas like the arms, neck, and face. And no exercise corrects this, unless, of course, you can go and address the real problem. We'll deal with the saggy skin in other videos on this channel. So you can see, unless you understand your hormones before doing exercise, you're not going to be able to put the protein into the muscles that you're trying to exercise, and you're not going to be able to access the fat that you're trying to burn. Simply, you're topping it up constantly with carbs, and usually it's the bad carbs, and we'll go into good and bad carbs shortly, that are causing the problem. So you need to make the following dietary changes urgently if you're making any progress. You've got to cut out all sugars because they raise insulin, and that includes initially fruit juices and fruits, because certain fruits and fruit juices contain tons of sugar. Ideally, you should take a little holiday from alcohol. Cut it out completely for a month or two if you can, but at least dial it back dramatically. You also have to stop snacking between meals, so 2 or 3 meals a day are all you need, and you really got to be strict on not snacking in between those meals because that continually spikes insulin. The aim is the lower number of meals you have a day, the lower the insulin spikes. Now, if you add healthy fats like avocado, olive oil into your meal, that makes you feel full for longer, and the fats don't spike the blood sugar. When you eat protein, you should never eat sugar with it because that magnifies the effect of the insulin release. You may also wish to experiment with intermittent fasting. We cover that again on this channel, And what's so powerful about intermittent fasting is it raises human growth hormone significantly. And human growth hormone burns fat and opposes cortisol, the stress hormone that parks the fat around the tummy. Plus, human growth hormone helps promote muscle growth. So an ideal meal should contain no more than 4 to 5 ounces of protein, lots of leafy green vegetables, and plus avocado or healthy fats, along with healthy oils. Now, appreciate that vegetarians and vegans will have their own protein choice. However, for those that are not vegetarian or vegan, foods like fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines are a very good choice because they not only contain the fat that we're trying to include in the diet, they contain omega-3, which helps lower inflammation, and that's common with insulin resistance. Also avoid protein shakes and protein bars because most of them contain a lot of hidden sugar. Eggs are another good choice, and ideally you want to be looking for free range or duck eggs. Similarly, seafood is very beneficial, plus fatty meat, not lean meat, fatty meat. So for example, lean chicken isn't your best choice, even though that's what a lot of nutritionists will recommend. You want to keep the fat with the meal to keep the appetite down. Nuts can be a double-edged sword. Very fatty nuts like macadamia nuts are fine, but other nuts contain a lot of carbs, so you want to use them in moderation. Now, when you start to eat like this, you actually upregulate your body's ability to burn fat. And it can take a while because you've spent years teaching it to run on carbs, and usually the wrong type of carbs. If you eat very low density carbs like leafy green vegetables and salads, you not only stop yourself feeling hungry, but you pick up important micronutrients that the body needs when you're burning fat. So please also look at adding a little salt to your diet because salt is beneficial when you're running on predominantly fat and protein as your main nutrient source. Now, I'm still putting exercise aside for a moment because we want to focus on two other hormones, human growth hormone and cortisol. The problem is that the adrenal glands do not have an on-off switch. And we can take on stress over the years and it has like a compounding effect on us, like another veneer. For example, we often start off life at college and we get stressed by exams and relationships. And then possibly we have children and they bring their own stress, including sleepless nights. Lack of sleep causes cortisol to rise dramatically, yet it also upsets our sleeping pattern. So again, there could be a vicious circle of a lack of sleep. And then there may be a divorce and trying to live with a divided income, or you may have children that you're trying to manage as well as working full-time. So add on top of that the dietary stresses that we can have by what has become really a typical diet in the West. And you have stress hormones running rampant in an unopposed manner, and that we just get more efficient at making them. We hold all of these stresses a lot of the time in our body, a lot of tension, a lot of sleep deprivation, and we hold that tension in the body, and we hold that stress in the body and just become super efficient at making these stress hormones in an unopposed way. Growth hormone can counter cortisol, so getting really good levels of sleep is crucial because it's at nighttime when we produce the human growth hormone. Similarly, rather than pounding away on a treadmill at the gym, long walks in open space can be very beneficial, bringing cortisol down. And we'll cover cortisol in another video specifically aimed at you really understanding that hormone because it's critical in your fat loss. Similarly, meditation or relaxation exercises will bring down cortisol, as will deep breathing exercises, and we'll cover that again on the channel. So when you cut out snacking between meals, Use intermittent fasting, and again, that's covered in a full video on this channel. The insulin levels stabilize very fast and the fat begins to melt away. So let's see what you've learned in this video. We'll do a recap. First of all, are you insulin resistant? You need to understand cortisol and human growth hormone. Then adjust your diet to match that. Only then should you look at designing your exercise routine. Otherwise, you could be overstressing the body, just jumping into what you consider as the right exercise. Finally, please hit the subscribe button and the update link, and we'll see you on the next video.